I'm Cathy Fuss, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So Kathy does something incredible, and sometimes we have real famous people on the show, Kathy, that like musicians that have won multiple Grammys on the same night. We've had those kind of folks on, actors that we've all seen in plays, but sometimes we have just incredible people who make all of our lives better in their own special way. And you are one of those people. And it's so incredibly special what you do and how you make the world a better place for people who have the passion that you serve. And I just love it. Every time I talk to you, I never get enough. And I try not to bug you because you're super busy, but I always want to talk to you more because you're just such a great person. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Why don't you tell everybody what you do?
I am the series owner for an amateur endurance racing series, which happens to be the fastest growing auto racing series in North America right now, and it's called Lucky Dog Racing League. And, Pete, I was thinking this morning, I was on a show with you several years ago when you were just getting started. And I think it's been about 7 years.
It
You've
has.
come a long way too. Very
Oh,
proud
thank
of you, buddy. Very proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have had a lot of miles. I mean, you were nascent then too. I mean, I remember we had the conversation where you knew the idea was there, you believed in it, but you also had cashed in your retirement and said, like, this has to work. And
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
you
still
know,
saying that every morning. So let me see here. We're going on what we're calling Lucky Season 7 for
okay.
2021. And it's just phenomenal, the growth in the amateur level of motorsports. And being based out here on the West Coast, we're now growing all across country, and we do a race in Mexico and Canada, etc.
Right.
um, I'm just always in awe of how racing speaks to people, even if you're not a driver. I mean, as you know, the type of racing that I met you out years ago is a team based thing. It takes a village. And certainly in the middle of COVID, your village is really important. So we can talk about that too, because it's just been a wild year, absolutely wild year.
Yeah, it is. And I do want to get into the COVID aspect of it because you're right. Well, let's get into that next. The Okay, let me explain what we're talking about here because you're saying amateur racing, and for folks that don't know, let me explain this. So, me and my idiot friends have a car. It's an old crappy car, and we just continue to work on it, improve it. And I'm no mechanic. I'm no handy, like person who's able to fix those kind of things. So I largely get by on personality, willingness to buy beer, willingness to drive 500 miles to go get an engine and drive back. Like there's value in what I do in that I support the
Mhm.
team in the logistical sense. And so we all sort of find our spot. I hate working on cars. I mean, that's the God's honest truth, Kathy. Like everybody else is like, don't you feel better like when we get it fixed? And I'm like, no, I'm just relieved that it's over, you know? And I want to drive the car and I'm desperate to do it, but I'm also desperate to see my friends have a great time driving in these cars. So we aren't well-moneyed teams. We have these cars that are always fatally flawed, always about to break, and then we just race our hearts out and then get together as a team and solve the problem and take the checkers no matter what. Like, how do we get on this track? I don't care if it costs us $1,000. And these things happen. And I know, Kathy, you've seen this. You'll blow your engine up and you'll look around and you'll say, that guy on that team has the same engine and it's in his Ford. I bet he'll let us use it. And this is his actual personal data, like
I
day-to-day
was gonna
driving
say this
car.
is the daily driver that you
Right.
see,
This is the car that I used to go to work. As
people.
long as it's got together by Monday, let's go. And the next thing you know, that person's helping you pull the engine out of their own truck so you could stick it in your race car that you just blew the engine up in, and they're like, yes, let's do it. And so this is why like we get so crazy about this, because it's these impossible things. It's so much fun. It's stressful in a fun way, like in these problems. And you cannot do all this stuff yourself. There is no team that just does all these things themselves. There's guys that try with really small crews, but this is what Kathy does. She creates this environment where we get to go to, world-class tracks, Laguna
Mhm.
Seca, Sears Point, whatever they want to call that track now.
Charlotte, yeah,
Charlotte.
yeah, Charlotte. I mean, it's amazing the places that we get when a lot of people, when they think about auto racing, certainly at the amateur level, a lot of us grew up with going to our local dirt track. In fact, that's how I got involved with this craziness, or going to the drag strip, or heaven forbid, you're out illegally street racing.
Right.
And so there's a lot of people out there that have a need for speed, but they don't really understand how they can get into it. And about 12 years ago, um, a group really was at the forefront of that, and that was the 24 Hours Lemons, which is where you originally came from. In fact, I drove in the very first two races there at Altamont Motorsports Park and realized that this endurance stuff is fun. Um, but the bottom line is that it's very affordable and approachable. For most
Right.
people, they, especially at our age, not necessarily you and I, but we might have a little more money than we have time.
Right.
So they'll, throw somebody in, get in a used race car, and they'll come out running. They don't have to invest a lot of time in practice and prep and all those things. But in endurance racing, I think what makes it unique, and this level of grassroots motorsports, is you're racing from anywhere, at least in our series, 7 to 24 hours, depending upon what the format is. Well, just like you
Right.
said, you're not the mechanic. And as I try to explain to folks, really the most challenging part of amateur endurance racing is keeping your team together. I
Oh,
mean, not one person drives for 7 or 24 hours. You're all switching out every 2 hours, every hour and a half, to drive, and everybody brings something to the table. Someone's got a bigger wallet and no time. Someone's got no wallet, but they know a lot about how to fix something. Other folks are broke, but they can come, help run errands like you do. So everybody plays an important role. And what's interesting is you don't hear us talking so much about drivers, and I guess at a pro level, you got a driver and a crew, and the driver gets all the glory. In this type of racing, well, you will stretch the term glory, but all of you have a taste of that, whether it's you've stayed up all night, replacing an engine. I could go on for hours over
oh my God.
the track miracles and the crazy stuff that I've seen. Um, but it's remarkable to see what people will do, even
Yeah.
though they have the resources. I mean, some of these folks may have an extra Miata at home or whatever, could run home, but no, part of the allure of this is, okay, how are we going to fix this? And in the process, you've met all kinds of other people in the paddock with you. And I mean, I've walked away with lifelong friends. And I left this for a real job. I was in software for 30 years and running around the world, actually at nuclear power plants. And I look at my life now, I'd much rather be a broke racer
Exactly. Yes.
than, just because of the people are so damn awesome. I miss my
Yeah.
paycheck, but it's priceless,
Yeah.
the stuff that I see and the relationships that are forged. I mean, I know your team probably better than others, and over the years, and you have a really diverse group of people. I've also got teams that have 3 generations that are running.
Mm.
So, I mean, in this day and age, what can you do with your family,
Right.
really? Especially
Right.
if you've got, we allow as young as 16 years old if they have 2 years documented race experience. But, and we're getting wives and girlfriends out there, the kids are coming out. And not only is it a good business model, because if you have everybody at the family, nobody's complaining about dad being or mom being out at the racetrack, but it brings people together in a really unique
Yeah.
way. And I know that you've seen that quite a bit, either running with us or some of the previous groups you and I have been associated with. It's really remarkable because I don't know what else you can do in this day and age. My kids certainly didn't want to do anything with us, but
Yeah.
they're young adults now, and they go out and race with us. So that part of it is, I think, really important, even more so after the year that
Mm.
all of us have had. So you can tell I'm passionate about this racing
Yeah.
thing. It's a game changer. But I will admit, and I know that you come across people like this too, that think we have lost our mind. I mean,
Oh
my
yeah.
parents, my mom was always there yelling. I could be racing and hear my mom yelling. She loved it. To this day, my dad thinks it's the most ridiculous thing to leave a job with Oracle so that you can go race cars. So I don't know what your folks ever said about all of this, but you either have friends that think it's cool or they think you're absolutely nuts.
Yeah. Well, let me also just for the non-racing folks out there, let me say this too. This is not just demolition derby. A lot of people get that sense when you
Oh,
describe what it
that's
is.
true. True, true.
Super, super low budget. We don't spend a lot of money, as a norm. There are teams that certainly have money. There are certainly like old sponsored cars that are brought out of retirement because these guys want to race, and there's like $100,000 in that. But I'm saying in general, the regular person, it's you and your friends. You have a car, it's repurposed into a race car, is a completely safe, and every car is inspected for safety. You get to know these cars, so you're like, yes, we know this car. What have you changed? Okay, this is going to get whatever. So all the safety stuff is taken care of. Is there danger in racing? Of course, but we also have fire suppression systems and all of these countermeasures. So when you're hearing racing, we're not just going out and trying to annihilate each other. And now think about this. This is our baby. This is our pride and joy, and it barely holds together. The last thing I want to do as a driver, my philosophy, Cathy, right, is not to be the fastest on the track every lap because it doesn't work in endurance racing. My job is to bring the car back in the best possible shape it can so the next driver has plenty of car to deal with. Now, you're always driving a car that's in some form of breaking down. So if you hear a sound, you're communicating back with the pit like, hey, I hear a sound. They're working on what that might be, and we're thinking of contingency plans, but you're not trying to run into someone else's car. Sometimes cars touch, but it's touch, it's tap. It's usually not crush. And because no one wants that. No one wants to be responsible for smashing somebody else's baby with their baby. Like it's so don't get that impression.
That's
And the
a that's a good
yeah,
point because I think when this kind of racing first started over a decade ago, I think there was definitely that kind of impression out there that it's a bunch of really junky ass cars and we're going to hit each other. I mean, Lucky Dog is a no contact series. Obviously, I'm not driving your car, which is probably a good thing these days. Uh, I have no control really over what you're doing on track except to make it incredibly painful on the back end, and you're going to go sit in the doghouse and serve a penalty. But the barriers to racing, and a lot of it is not knowing what to do, or it costs a lot of money. It's really removed because we allow you to come out, we have practice, we allow you to go out and you're there at your own speed. We give you a novice school on Friday night, and the car, we really only have two rules at Lucky Dog. The car's got to be 15 years or older. And you kind of think, well, that's really not that old of a car. I mean, there's some, except if you're driving a Ford. I had to throw that in there just for you, Pete. Oh, wait, your guys are a Supra now, right?
we're a Supra
So,
with the Chevy motor. Yeah,
yes,
so
yes,
it's
yes, yes. So you're looking to get a 15-year-old car, and then we require a spec tire, which is a Hankook RS4 regular DOT tire that you put on your everyday car. That's affordable, lasts long, great heat cycles, and they give us $3,000 worth of tires to give to all the teams every race. Um, so it's easy and affordable to get a car. The cars have a full cage in them. They've got safety seats, safety belts. You wear a neck device. You wear full fire suit. You've got a helmet. All of these things have expiration dates on them, which we watch really, really closely. So we pride ourselves on our safety record. But you're right. At the end of the day, it's dangerous. And I always tell everybody, don't tell your mom you're out racing. And if you, we were at our championship last month, which is Thunderhill Raceway, 2 hours north of the Bay Area in Willows, and I had someone break their ankle. And we rarely have broken bones, but he had tripped over a jack. So
Mhm.
here we are racing. These guys are hitting like 140 on the front stretch. I had 121 cars. So when you talked about tapping, I call it kissing door handles.
Right.
They were kissing door handles a little bit, but no, it took tripping over a jack to be injured. So we made sure that the driver knew that we had our story straight, that we saw the car 9 feet in the air, on fire, upside down, so that he at least had a good story. But
Yes.
there's so much safety in those cars. And the one thing that really opened my eyes when I got into this business was the area of insurance. And in order to get motorsports insurance, it's just crazy. You have to have 5 different insurance companies that all come together to cover you, including Lloyd's of London. We now have to carry terrorism insurance, which I just think is crazy.
Yeah.
But it's a wild business. I thought nuclear power was, a little bit on the edge. And this was going to be my retirement, to go out racing. I'm working 7 days a week, 20 hours a
Yeah.
day. We've had so much growth. We've got about 600 teams now, 4,000
It's
drivers.
remarkable. It's
It is.
remarkable.
It's really, really, really cool. And I appreciate your
I want to jump
support.
in and say something. This is to your credit because um, I came up in Lemons and I love it, except for it's too crowded and the social hierarchy stuff doesn't float my boat. Oh, I exist. I actually paid as much money as anybody else to be here.
Mhm.
You know, let's not throw all this love at these other people and things let's I just didn't dig that too much. It was very, I don't want to say clicky, but it was clicky. And so totally tolerable, totally a great time. I totally love it. But at your series, because it's smaller in terms of the number of cars on the track,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, you're accessible. It was for me a better experience overall. Definitely better than the competing other brand that was
Mhm.
bad at that part. I mean, I don't want to get started. I don't even want to say their name because I hate to throw any kind of shade at anybody because they're also supporting racing, but needlessly combative as a brand. And I was like, you didn't. So when you said you were going to start, I knew like there's really good chance that Cathy's going to pull this off because you know the people, you have the attitude, and you really have. And I've marshaled for you, and I know what it's like to work for you, even under stress, And
Mhm.
and yeah, you're under stress, but you're still very pleasant to be around and everything, and it's great. I wanted to tell you my philosophy on marshaling. My job as the marshal
Well, tell what
is
people what a marshal is, because
oh, okay, oh yeah, yeah,
it's
right.
really important part of
It's
what we do.
very
And
important.
a great learning experience too, if you're not sure you wanna go drive, right?
Yeah,
Come out and marshal.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and get compensated to maybe race at some point. And I should say this too: you are 100% right. The parking lot where we all are living and communicating, it's way more dangerous. I've seen the craziest things happen on accident, not even on purpose. I'm even talking about donuts and stuff late at night, getting people in trouble. Sorry about
Uh-oh.
that. But the marshal thing is that you got certain jobs around the track to try to keep things safe. Obviously, there's people that work the corners that wave the flags, yellow flags, all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about them, but they're also there too. That's how professional and safe this is. There are literally 20 some odd people at any given point in time trying to make sure that this race is safe and keeping an eye on things. And look, race teams are going to push hard on everything because they're trying to survive, they're trying to win, they're being competitive, and sometimes you need an adult. And so the marshal is one of the adults there. It's like, hey, listen, knock that off, you know, keep racing, keep going forward, but don't do that. Put your, like when you put fuel into a car, it's super hot. You and I have been at a track where someone puts fuel into the car and all of a sudden there's a fire. Granted, nobody gets hurt, but that's
Yeah.
because, and literally my girlfriend's son was there. It was his first time marshaling and he's like, there's a fire.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, people seem to think that at a racetrack, it's somehow less flammable. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay, you just drove for 2 hours.
right.
You could see the heat coming off of your
Yes.
brakes, but we're going to dash some fuel on there and see what happens. So
Oh
you're
my
right.
God.
I think when it comes to safety, and that's why we have so many marshals, is the fueling in itself can be even more dangerous than being on the track. So, but I think you made a good marshal, and I like the fact that you said there needs to be an adult, and I kind of giggled because adult and Pete in the same sentence in a
Yeah.
previous life might not have
I'm
gone
I'm
together,
glad to
but
be
you
an
did
idiot
good
when I'm
by
not a marshal, right? But my have a job. Like one of the things that happens is you come off the track and you're so keyed up, and everybody's like, "Oh, let's really do a great job," and they're so keyed up that simple stuff gets left behind. So you just watch, and then what I typically do is I'm listening on the radio to what's going on as you guys watch the track, and I'll go up to a team and that I like to work pit lane, and so I'll go up to car 15 and I'm like, "Hey, listen." They're talking about you on the radio, so you guys may want to just back it off a little bit. I don't want anything to ruin your guys' day. Just or
right,
maybe
right,
yeah, maybe your guy is tired. Check on him. Look into that and make sure everything's fine. I'm not, and they're like, "You're the marshal," and I'm like, I'm not marshaling. I'm just saying, be aware that your car came up. I would want to know this if I was racing. When I do, I want to know these things. And it
right.
was because they always come back at me, and I'm like, "You're yelling at the wrong guy. I want you on the track. I'm trying to help keep you there. You just calm this person down or make sure that they're all right, because they're hitting other cars or other cars are hitting them. I don't know, don't care. I just don't want you guys to get a penalty." And then once they get the vibe for that, I'm like, hey, check your visor. I'm not like the marshal. I'm Pete, the guy who's making sure that they all stay safe. And that's sort of how I approach it. I know a lot of guys don't do it that way, but I'd rather be in front of the problem and let them know that I want them on the track than you little bit because sometimes the marshal gets yelled at quite a bit.
Oh, the marshal could get, well, I mean, it's okay. As I tell everybody, we're racing for trophies made out of car parts that look like dogs. Okay. NASCAR, IndyCar, F1's not there scouting us old dogs. Let's have some fun. But I get it. The minute the helmet goes on,
Right.
it's odd. And people forget to put their gloves on or the visor's up. And it's interesting if you're a driver to be on the other side because you really understand why we're like, where's your gloves? Don't spill your fuel
They're
and
going to
all
get
these
into a
things.
super hot car that's full of fuel that has a fire
Yes.
suppression system. And I've literally looked down at this girl and said, "You don't have racing shoes on. You have Converse on." And she's like, "Oh," like her brain, she was so locked in. So that's why you need that adult there. It's like, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm just going to say, that's not safe. Let's fix that. And then get back out of there because you're not in that big of a hurry. And no one's in such a big a hurry that they can compromise the wellness of their feet should there be any kind of a fire.
Exactly, and we give them 5 hours, or 5 hours, it feels like it some days, 5 minutes of, to fill their cars. That's the minimum amount of time so that they're not being unsafe and splashing it, and, we do I would say about half of our teams are novices and half are coming out of some kind of club racing or they're licensed through like SCCA or NASA or they're part of the Porsche club, BMW clubs. So it's kind of an interesting mixture of people. I mean, here you've got new drivers, experienced drivers, fast cars, slow cars, newer cars, and then, the 63 Rambler shows up or something.
Yes.
Um, it's such a hodgepodge to keep all of these balls in the air and make sure that everybody is safe. And knock on wood, it works because
It
people
works.
learn to be respectful. And the other thing I want to mention is, and you kind of touched upon this, is, and I don't know if this is part of it's my business philosophy. I kind of feel like during the week, your life is a living hell. I don't know about you, but we have, fighting teenagers, aging parents, spouses, jobs, finances,
Right.
houses. I want your weekend to be blissful. And there has been some times and I know you hear this on the radio when you've worked, that I've just had enough with these guys. It's
Yeah.
like there's only so much you can do to make it easy and delightful, and it's not working. They have to feel a little bit of pain before we get their attention, and that's when I've kind of lost my shit and said, "All right, pull that driver out or put that car in the trailer." But it takes a long time to get there. But my philosophy has always been about being easy to work with. And
Mm.
possibly being a woman in motorsports, there's the maternal part of it. My husband will completely disagree because he tells me, "You're so nice to our drivers. Why are you so mean to me?" But and it's true. You're like, "Oh, you're so nice to these drivers." Well, I get in the car, drive home 8 hours, pulling a trailer, and he's got to listen to it. But during the week, it works to my advantage because when he doesn't do what he needs to do, I let him know there'll be a black flag waiting for him,
Oh,
and the garbage needs to go out. But I run the business. Greg
yeah.
races, and that is always interesting. I can honestly say there has been times that I have slept in the guest room because we're fighting over the rules. I mean, we're just so passionate, and he's the
Yeah.
racer, and I was a driver at one point. I don't drive now, um, but the whole atmosphere is just so much passion, and it's not in a bad way. It's not like everybody's red mist and pissed off. I mean, some people are. You've seen some people that'll pull into the pit. It takes them a half an hour to fuel their car, find their driver. They've lost their wristband. And then you've got the team that thinks that they're NASCAR and they're all,
Oh my God.
and then they've got, 3 minutes sitting at pit out because they're ready to rock and
Yeah.
roll.
Yeah.
But it takes all kinds of types. And you know what? It works in
Yeah.
our format.
It does.
If you're not out there to take home a trophy and you just want to go putt around and it's about keeping that car running, people have a great time. But if you happen to be one of these people and there are people that have spent money, and we get a lot of pros. It's easy to do business with us, and it's
Hmm.
fun.
It's
So
fun.
these people want to come. So
Yeah.
we'll get pros that come out, and then you got to figure out, well, what kind of parameters do you put around that just to keep it fair?
Right. Yeah, there's so much to see and so much to experience when you go to these races because you really have access, unlike you would at any other track. I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
again, you have to be safe, but you can go up and like talk to the team as they're racing. Again, as a marshal, I'm watching teams, and if I see something that I think is worthy of a comment, I'll let them know. So there was a team of young men, maybe they're college age or something. This is at Willow Springs, and they were like hup hup hup, and they were like vaulting over the wall, and I'm like, hey, listen, vaulting over the wall, not going to save you any time. Matter of fact, someone might get hurt. You're probably going to forget something. You guys ought to notch it back just a little bit. I want you to compete. I want you to go at it hard, but you're overdoing the pit stops.
You're gonna get
And
run over. The
yeah,
guys that jump in front of the cars,
oh
like,
my god, like you don't have to jump in
oh,
front of the car. Like, just wait. And by the way,
really
there's other cars
right.
coming in and all these other things. And so it's like slow down. This is the spot where you can get hurt the easiest because you are not a car, you're a person. And the other person coming, you don't know what condition their car is in. Maybe
Do you
their
have
wheel falls
brakes?
off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or is there brakes? I mean,
right.
I look at these guys jumping over the wall, I'm like, it
Yeah.
is so, so not worth it. But you're right. I mean, we've seen things like cars come in on fire. We've seen, and
Uh-huh.
thank God for fire suppression systems. One
I
button and
I
it's
had a car. Oh my
done.
god! I got to tell a funny story. So you were there, and it was one of those times we were working with the other league, and they have like this split event where there's like an autocross kind of thing, and so we're still supporting that side of the
Oh,
thing.
yeah, I remember
And
that. Yeah.
this guy's got this beautiful Ford GT. It's like a $250,000 car, and he comes in, and everybody's pointing at it, and his car is on fire. It's smoking, and so I look and I'm like, that guy's car's on fire. So I hop over the fence or walk over or whatever. And I go see him and I'm like, hey, your car's on fire. Like he's in the middle of the pit lane, hasn't even got to where he's going to drive off because I don't want him to drive any further. And he's like, oh my God. So he gets out and he goes to pull the hood up on his car. And he's got one of these kind of hoods for everybody's looking. It's like it opens from the
Oh,
middle to the
right,
rear.
right, right.
And and it's carbon fiber. So the harder he pulls on it, the more the other side locks down. So I'm like, I'll help you. So I go around to the passenger side, and I'm now helping a guy with a car. I say on fire. It was about to be on fire,
It
but
was, right.
and so I help him get this clamshell up. I hand him the fire extinguisher, and you're screaming at me, "Get away from that car!" I was like, I'm trying to, but I wanted to. We had the ability to catch the fire, but these are the kind of crazy things that happen, and everybody will talk about that for the rest of their lives. We're like, this guy came in his Ford GT, and it almost caught on fire.
It was on fire, or it's like every season, someone's hood comes up, and they're trying to safely get on track. When wheels come off,
Oh, I've
is
done that.
interesting for some reason. Like this summer, we were at a place called Area 27, which is in Oliver, BC. It's in Canada, and it's one of these exclusive club events. In fact, we were the first wheel-to-wheel outside sanctioning body to come in and race there. And it's not a Canadian thing, so I'm not yanking on the Maple Leaf dogs. But they couldn't keep tires on their cars. And it comes in packs. I'll go races, several races. Nobody loses a tire, and then we'll get to someplace, and everybody's losing tires, and that's a scary thing. I mean, we've had things where people's steering wheel has come off. I really have seen some crazy stuff, but I've never. Well, we have had a rollover. I was going to say. Usually, it's just one thing that happens, and
Yeah.
it's usually self-induced, which means it's one car that was probably overdriving or had a malfunction. In fact, 2 years ago, my husband rolled. We drive BMWs, as you know. Older BMWs are very
Right.
popular, the E30s, E36, because they're reliable, they're cheap, and you can find them at pick and pulls all over the place. But he rolled his BMW up there, and he claims it was a control arm failure. So that's the
Uh,
story that we're
uh,
going with. But most of the stuff that I've seen, I always hate to focus on this. But to be honest, people go to races to see stuff
yeah.
happen. Uh, every time I've had, knock on wood, every time I've had something, like a car's on fire, or, they've lost a wheel or whatever, it's all been on their own. It's not like these cars have hit each other and caught on fire or rolled or anything. Um, so that's usually, as soon as I find out the driver's okay, that's my next question. Was there another car involved? And the conversations, I think I could write a book. Next time you're out, we need to put you at what we call the dog house. And the
Nice.
dog house is where you go if you have had contact or you've been a bad dog
Yep.
on track. Come in, talk to Bulldog, and the stories that you hear
Oh my
are
God.
just like,
It's so
I could write a whole book around just the crap that we hear at Pit Inn on, what happened out there. And we're about getting people on track. We're racers too. I don't have a
right.
cat in this fight. In fact, I'm not even in the racing business. I am in the
Right.
hospitality entertainment business when you think about it. I want you to have the time of your life, be safe, and I send you home in the same condition. I got you. But the stories that come in, like it's really going to make a difference
Right.
whether you did it or they did it, and
Yeah.
it's always the other guy, right? Always
Right.
the other guy, and I know that.
Always.
And so the
Always.
longer they talk, the longer they sit, and we'll send them on their way. We'll make sure they're safe and not dehydrated and all that good stuff. The car's in good condition, and let them go. But there are some people that wanna whip out their video and their camera, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "I'm letting you go. I'm
Yeah.
letting you
I
go.
don't
I don't
care.
wanna hear it." But the stories, I'm gonna write a book someday on the crap that I've heard out on pit lane, 'cause,
I
it's
love,
funny 'cause
love.
people will
It's so
always
good.
say to me, "What do you do for a living?" And I
Oh,
kinda don't even
wow.
like to discuss it, 'cause then you have to
Right.
explain it. So I just tell everybody I babysit 400 men with a sprinkle of women on most weekends. But it really is funny, Pete. And I know you've seen some of the antics
Yeah.
that goes on. And you think to yourself, oh my thought is, as probably again as a woman, is Oh my god, the poor wife.
Yeah,
She's got if this is the way he's behaving at the track, I can only but they're usually really good
yeah.
at home, I find out. I pick on them. I
Well,
wouldn't
there's
trade that Dog Nation in for anything, though.
no,
Good.
it's great, and you do such a great job of being like the top dog. But the maturity that comes from having enough races to realize you're probably object fixated on something. You
Mhm.
know, like you didn't watch something or pay attention to something, or you missed a like. I have seen with my own eyes as I drive, cars cheat. I knew it. That's why these guys are so fast because they're cheating. And then I watch a video and I'm like, oh, I didn't see that. It's
Exactly! It's
like,
not what it appears to be. And I'll
yeah,
get
it is
back
not.
in
It is not. It's
2
so true.
2
The other
weeks to 30 days after we're back from a race, and they've gone through their GoPro video,
yeah,
I'll get a thing saying, "Oh, I didn't deserve that flag," and they
uh-huh,
pulled all the data, and had I not got that flag, we would have got 3rd place.
uh-huh.
And
Yeah,
then I go
yeah,
back again to, this is supposed to be for fun, racing
yeah,
for trophies made of car parts that look like dogs. But,
right.
it's intense. I don't care if you're racing, 24-hour Le Mans or 24-hour Rolex, or you're out racing at Willow Springs. You're still racing, and a racer, you either love this stuff and just feel it, or you
Yeah,
think it's the biggest waste of money. There's no in between.
there's no in between. Yeah, I remember, when we raced at Daytona with a series, it was great, and what a fantastic experience, and when I say Daytona, I mean the Daytona racetrack.
Daytona, yeah.
And when people think like this one moment changed our race, I remember a Saab 900 just just around the track all day long, sipping on gas. And our car was so freakishly fast. I would like come up and I'm like, I want to go 3 wide. I want to go 3 wide. And I think, is it worth it? And so I'd wait a minute and then I'm like, yes, it's worth it. And then I would go around 3 wide, in the corners and everything. Meanwhile, that Saab that I could pass 15 times never broke down, never needed gas, and they just drove calm the whole time. And they whooped everybody's asses.
And
They
they
beat
won
us. Yeah, I mean, we broke down with it, and I'm not even exaggerating, a part that you can't like, you could walk out of the store, it's so cheap, they'd be like, "Just take that stupid gasket." Like, it's nothing, like, it's a 2-cent part, kept us off the track for, I don't know, hours, and it was the dumbest thing ever, so when people say that, it's like, "Hey, how about you guys just drive more efficiently and have one less pit stop? And then your flag wouldn't matter, or whatever it is, like, just
Right,
calm
right.
down, and you'll be a lot more successful. We've The other thing is we've won, but the stories are never about when we won. Yeah, Pickles and I and Dave, we raced at Willow Springs and we won our class and had a great day. But it's the other stories, about the
It
time we
is.
had to go to South Central and buy an engine sight unseen and get it there and put it in and drop a bolt in it and blow it up before we even got it out of the paddock. We bought an engine that ran because we blew our other engine up and blew our engine up before we got to pit out and just said, drive it until it explodes. Like these are
That's
the
just
stories that
that's
matter.
yeah, I was gonna say red to failure. You're absolutely right. It's the catastrophic moments. And as you know, we do, like 24-hour races, which are just brutal.
Yeah.
'Cause you're exhausted, it's cold usually, you're tired at that point, and you see teams that, were able to get on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or something and find a new engine 6 hours away. And you see someone drive all night long and bring it back.
Uh-huh.
And there's nothing more heartbreaking for me as a series owner to see that car go back out on track and then it blows again.
Yeah.
And you would think that they would say, all right, we're done.
Yeah.
We're joining a bowling league or something. Sure enough, next race,
There
I
we are.
see that car right back out there again. Hey, that Saab at Daytona, was it red? Do you
In my mind, it
remember?
was silver, but I don't recall for sure. I just know that I only time I ever saw that car was when I was going by it by about 50 plus miles an hour faster, and it destroyed us by
Got
like
it.
100 plus laps. Yeah,
And
but
that's
but
a
that's
perfect example of an older car that wasn't particularly fast,
yeah,
and they had middle of the road drivers. They won a lot of races just because they were smart, and then you
yeah,
get folks like you guys that, you know think you're bringing a gun to a knife fight. I think I got that right. And the
Yeah.
thing blows up. So what lesson did you learn?
Get
Keep
done.
it stock. Keep it
Yeah.
stock.
Yeah. It's a hilarious, fun adventure. I want to talk a little bit more about like how someone does get involved in the racing. So, okay, everybody's like, "Wow, that sounds like so much fun. How do I do this, Cathy? I've never raced in my life. I can't even drive a stick. How do I get into a car?"
Can't even drive a stick. We actually had that discussion with the team yesterday, and I swear to God, I've had teams show up early and put their driver in a car, and they're out in the
Yep.
paddock, trying to
Yep.
learn that day before they get out there. Because most of the cars are sticks. We do have there's a couple automatics sprinkled out there, but let's be honest, a lot more fun and sporty to be shifting around. Um, so there's a couple ways to get involved with racing. For me personally, went all the way back to high school when Malibu Grand Prix was still around. So karting,
Right.
seriously, now I'm really dating myself.
Yeah.
Karting is a great way, and these karting tracks, these indoor ones, they're all over the Bay Area here. I actually think they're closed because of COVID at the moment. But what a great way to kind of learn, to be with other people on a track. And it's all about something we call situational awareness. And you
Mm.
kind of touched upon that a little bit with all the stuff that's going on in the cars, because you got cars behind you, in front of you, on the side of you. You got gauges so you don't blow up the car. You've got mirrors. There's a lot going on. And you just got to
Yes.
keep your own car on track. So karting's a great way to get into it. The way that I really got into it was our local circle track. I'm a dirt track driver by trade. And so we went and bought a late model, uh, a couple of them, uh, Camaros. And I'm like, how hard is this? And went out racing at our local dirt track. And that was a great way because we could do it as a family too. We put the
Right.
kids in it. You don't care what happens to these cars, and they're caged and safe. Um, and that was kind of how we got started in it. Some people will do what they call a track day or HPD, where they take their daily driver. A lot of these
Mm.
local tracks, and this isn't on dirt, these are road courses, so they're asphalt where you turn left and right. That's an important distinction.
Yes.
It's not like watching just turning left on TV with NASCAR. But you can take your own car out there. It's not wheel to wheel racing, but they put you out in sessions. You're spaced out, so you're not passing anybody. And that's a really good way to kind of get the lay of the land, see what the scene's like, meet other car people. Um, or you show up at a lucky dog race or
Mm.
24-hour lemons, and you have found a team, or you decided you were going to finally cage that, old BMW you've had sitting in the backyard, or your first car. A lot of times we see people's first car, seen a lot of Mustangs, 60s Mustangs come out, which is almost criminal. But folks will bring their car out, and you just get started. And every race, you learn a little bit more and you're a little bit faster. So there's lots of ways to get into it. You don't have to in fact, you don't even have to start with buying a car. A lot of these teams rent seats. Does your team, the Bandits, personally rent seats out in the car ever?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, we've definitely done it. It's hard because our car is it's such a powerful car. It's almost
Oh
unfair to
my
put someone.
God. You and your powerful
Yes,
car.
yes.
All
But
right, break it
it is. It's
down.
it's a big, fast car, and if you're
Right.
used to, you can get yourself into a bad spot with our car. There's a lot of cars that are big and fast, but our car typically is, if not the one of the fastest cars in the track. And so when you're going 150 at Laguna Seca and have to smash on the brakes and make that turn at turn two, it's good to have. I'm not saying you couldn't drive it every day because you could drive calmly. It's hard to drive calm going into turn two at Laguna Seca.
It is, and then they all come off of 11 and end up in the
Oh,
grapple, so I get it.
yeah,
So
that's
there are certain, like, I think Miatas are so easy to drive,
right,
and oh my
right.
god, they're so fun. I mean, the
Yeah,
series is probably half Miatas and half, BMWs
yeah,
these days, with
yeah.
some Fords sprinkled in, couple Toyotas. Um, But a Miata is such an easy car,
Yeah,
even though people are doing, engine swaps and stuff, and it was built to be a race car. And I think starting in a car like that is a really good idea rather than some powerful, beefy
yeah.
engine like you guys have in a car that's a little bit heavier. But I think you're right. And it's also finding the right clique of
Yeah.
of people too. That's really,
Because there's a
really
lot of
important
tension in
too.
these things. I mean, you really get keyed up and you really do object fixate on things. And you're like, you step back and you're like, what the hell are we doing? Like it's just, you get so amped up. Um, in terms of getting into Lucky Dog, I mean, you said you have to have a little bit of racing. So how much racing do you need to be able to come in and buy a seat or something like that?
Well, we see that's the thing that's kind of always been controversial about, this grassroots endurance racing is we don't require that we recommend that you do some track days and we recommend, you go and you take one of those classes. I mean, even at Laguna Seca, Skip Barber, who's a
Right.
partner sponsor of Lucky Dog, we encourage that, but the reality is there's a lot of people that just show up. They're friend. You know how this plays out. You're
Yeah.
with some buddies, you're sitting in the garage, everybody's having a beer, you meet a new guy or whatever, and then by the end of the night, oh yeah, you're part of the team. Yeah, we're driving next weekend at Sonoma. And
Yeah.
everybody's gathering gear for this poor victim. But that's how a lot of us, got started. You went out to the track and we do practice. We have a practice session before we ever drop the green flag, which the other series, our competitors don't do. Some of them will run an extra day just for that. But it really is helpful. And even if a new person wants to go out and just poke around during the practice and then observe and crew the rest of the race, and then coming out to volunteer as a pit marshal. I mean, it's really fun. You're in the middle of
It's
the
fun.
action and you'll
Yeah.
see the team. My husband happens to be one of these people where they're completely disorganized. The tools aren't where they're supposed to be. I mean, it's really shit show sometimes over there. And then you meet the team that's rolling out their giants, $15,000 snap-on rolling toolbox and everything's right in the proper place. So you got to get aligned with a team that you can be comfortable with.
Yeah.
Some people take this really seriously, at least when the track is hot, what we call it, and they fill out later. But a lot of folks are pretty casual. They just want to have fun, and they know that they understand the safety piece of it for sure. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I think the bottom line here is if you're interested in racing, obviously go to luckydog.com, but also feel free to reach out to Cathy. I mean, she's going to know somebody. It's like these guys are looking for a driver, or join these groups on Facebook. They talk about these things, you know, we,
Exactly.
and we all want you to race like that. I want you to do it. I want you to try. Maybe you're not a racer. Maybe you do it once. Maybe you do it 10 times. Who knows? But yeah, we want you to do it because it is an absolute riot and it's so much fun. And I think how you've approached it with your positive attitude and everything else, it's just great. And there are, you want to collect tracks. There are so many tracks that I haven't been to yet, and I'm dying to go back to Utah to race whatever they call that track again because that was such a great
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah,
And
Utah Motorsports Campus. People
yeah,
don't realize the amount of incredible tracks on the West Coast. Everybody always thinks of like the South as this racing mecca. But I mean, I think we've got 18 events for 2021. We're still adding to it. There is such good racing just here on the West Coast that you don't even, especially, well, look at the Bay Area. We've got Sonoma, Thunder Hill, Laguna Seca, WeatherTech
right.
Raceway. It really is very approachable on the West Coast, which people are just kind of in awe of. You're kidding me. I can go racing. I don't have to, I don't have to go somewhere on the East Coast. And even the Midwest, we'll be making a debut in Minnesota this summer. I think we're there in August. So you can do this all over the place. The Canadians love this too, because they go ice racing during the winter, so they got to have something to do during the summer. And it's been so hard with COVID because the border is closed and
Right.
our Canadian teams can't come down. We have a lot of Canadian teams, and they're just some of my favorite customers because
Yeah.
they have such great attitudes. They could blow up a car and they're like, oh, well, let's crack a couple Labatt's and, they'll still have a good weekend. Where the US teams will throw a couple tools
Right.
and either give up or do what you guys do and go to pick a pull,
Oh my God.
20-hour drive each way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so
It's
yeah,
for
our
sure.
website is racelucky.com. And we also have something called a forum. And on the forum, there's a section called Lucky Match. And no, I guess you could get a girlfriend or boyfriend there if you wanted. But it's designed to match up teams that have available seats and drivers that are looking for a seat. So a lot of the horse trading goes on there, as well as social media, which we're on all the various platforms. And to contact me directly, I'm at info@racelucky. And I a lot of times will do introductions. There's just so many teams now and drivers that we always find a place to put you.
Yeah, it's not terribly challenging to get you in the car, and it's not terribly expensive. Like I mean, you have to do some math and some figuring, but if you're going to race, let's say just 2 hours on the track, what would you spend for that experience? It
A
is
good question.
yeah,
That's a
and
really
you
good
might get
question.
4 hours, you know,
True,
it's,
true,
it's,
or more depending,
yeah,
how
yeah,
folks are doing pit stops and stuff. I'm seeing right now, and the one of the things that's going on in this level of racing is what we call speed creep. So cars are getting a little more sophisticated and faster, and so there's some reliable competitive cars out there. On average, I see teams charging for the seat $250 an hour.
mm,
So that includes, because you got to remember, you're burning up gas, it's
yeah,
wear and tear on the car. Someone had to
yeah.
tow it there. Someone had to buy the car. You've got other consumables, tires, etc. So it's usually I see 250 an hour that teams are charging. And then Lucky Dog, it's $300 for the weekend.
Right.
I mean, you'll spend that just farting
Easy.
around that wing stop on your way to Home
Wings.
Depot.
You buy a lot of wings at
Oh,
Wingstop.
we do eat a lot of wings. We're never home, so there's a lot of wing stop at our
I want to
feature.
ask you about COVID because this is a very communal community. Like as we talk about getting the car back out and campaigning this next year, it's like okay, we got to deal with gear, and this might sound gross to folks, but this is what you do to get on the track. You're like, you can wear my shoes, you can wear my helmet. Like if something's wrong, like you get in the same stuff. We suck on the same Camelback. I mean, these are realities. You were in the same space. You were inches from each other. As I put my hands on you on your chest to buckle you in and I'm pulling the breath out of you to keep you safe, I am millimeters from you. So it seems like it wouldn't be a very COVID dangerous place, but you are really intimate with these things, and
And we've worked around that. I mean,
okay.
to be honest, we when this first happened, we had a couple races that were postponed, and then in June we resumed racing. And I'm trying to think where we were in Washington. We were the first endurance series to return to racing after the initial shelter in place. And it was scary. It was. And everybody's all worried about, masks and social distancing and extensive databases for contact tracing and all the stuff that is second nature to us now. But at first it was like, oh my God, I can barely get these teams to a racetrack. Now I got to make sure they're doing all these other things. And the second piece of that, so we're, I think, on our ninth race under COVID right now that we're preparing for. But even during this second shutdown, racetracks are exempt,
Oh, good.
which I don't understand.
Right.
considering you can't go to a restaurant or,
Yeah.
have a
Can't get a
funeral.
haircut.
Yeah, I can't get my hair cut, but I could go to the racetrack. So
Oh,
that's kind of an interesting thing to me. And um, we continue to monitor it really closely, especially here in California, where every day it's changing and
right.
we've been surging. And we would never put someone in danger. And I have to tell
Right.
you, motorsports, it never pays the bills. So it's a passionate thing. I think
Right.
you would know about these things.
Oh,
Um, where the money is important, canceling a race, not, not going to impact anything. It's not what we do for primary. It's my full-time job, but it doesn't pay the bills.
right.
So it's never a money thing. So we're always looking at, can we be safe? Can we
Right.
distance? And so we've done things for like drivers meetings. We'll do them via Zoom before we ever leave for the track, just to keep everybody separated. But the rule is your helmet's on or you're wearing a mask. And people don't just walk around with their helmets. Usually they're in the car racing.
Right.
And so you talk about belting in and stuff, and some drivers still wear their mask under their helmet too. I see them doing that. But yeah, you're helping each other buckle in. You're remaining socially distanced either on pit lane and on the paddock. And I never thought my race trailer would have like 3 crates marked COVID, because we travel with masks. And one of the coolest things is the head winemakers from Corbel Winery that make the champagne or sparkling wine race with us. And so Corbel for a while was producing um, hand sanitizer. So when you come to Lucky Dog, not only will we give you a mask, but you got some high end hand sanitizer from Corbel. So we do everything really safe. And to be honest, I've only had one incident with someone not wearing a mask, and I knew it was a political statement, though they told me it's for medical reasons. Well, these tracks are like, even medical reasons, stay home if you can't wear a mask.
Mm.
You have enough to manage without worrying about a mask. And it's just like fueling. You forget your gloves or your visors up. The mask will drop down. And so I usually spend most of my time just busted butt on keeping everybody safe in that area. And as you know, we usually do a big charitable dinners on Saturday night. Those are on hiatus for this reason. We have to park trailers 10 feet apart. So it's changed our world, but people want to go racing. I think it's their mental health, to be honest. They're
Yeah.
back with their people in a safe environment and doing something that feels a little bit normal. I
Yeah.
mean, the Laguna Seca race literally sold out in seconds, and I've got
Wow.
31 teams sitting on a wait list. That
Yeah.
goes to show you, in the middle of a global pandemic and
Yeah.
closed borders and still wildfires going on, that shows you how much people need to go out and be doing something that feels a little bit normal.
And if you want to feel alive, get that windshield full of about 130 miles an hour and 5 cars in front of you, and you will be living. I mean, there's no room for stress. There's no room for anything else. Your brain. If you've got a 486 brain like I do, and go back in the olden times, it is full. It is like you like. I was
Just
driving one time. My brain was so full, I forgot to push the pedal all the way down to the floor. I was just kind of cruising because there was so much input coming in, and I'm like, "Oh, that's right. I got to mash this pedal."
yeah, see, there's just one more thing. My thing in a race car was
uh,
breathing. I would sit there and hold my breath for some reason.
yeah,
And then it's like, "Oh, that's right. I need to breathe. I need to
yeah,
steer," and, all the stuff that's going on,
right,
and I would forget to breathe. So, I think everybody has something
yep,
that they do, and, there's things that are important, like watching your gauges so that the temperature doesn't fry your engine and stuff, and the amount of folks that come in that, haven't been watching the temperature gauge. You can't be looking, you're supposed to be looking at everything, but in reality, something
yeah.
will probably fall through the crack. But not mashing the gas pedal is a new one for me
I wasn't going
accompaniment.
slow. I just wasn't mashing. I was
He
like,
does more
I'm like,
mashes.
okay, okay. Oh wait, holy shit! I can be going faster.
Do
Well,
you I have to ask you
yeah,
ask you a question. I get to interview you. For
yeah.
me, it's like walking into the track, and the first thing I usually smell is not fuel, but tires, the smell of
Mm,
tires, and it kinda
mhm,
gets me excited. Then you come in the garages, you can smell the fuel, but it's the noise. When
mm.
I hear even to this day, when I hear a car start at a racetrack, I'm even getting goosebumps talking about it. There's something about the
Yeah,
experience, and the sound is something that just really is interesting, especially when you got a car like yours. It's a little throaty, and you're like, "Oh, this is kinda sexy." So,
yeah.
just the experience of the environment, even if they're not on track, is still a really neat thing to see. Plus, all their liveries, how have they decorated their cars? And I know, you know a little bit about that too. So, the
Oh yeah.
decorating of the cars is also a lot of fun and what people
Yes.
try to do, and it's either totally awesome or my grandkids could have done a better job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the other piece of it that I think you forget. We're so focused about being on track, but there's just this whole scene and going up to the tower. We allow you to go up to the tower. We'll even arrange to put you in the pace truck to start the race with us, or if you want to drop a flag. It's really fun. We try to get the whole family involved. And when you see, someone's, 3-foot-year-old son, we're holding him up and he's dropping the green flag. Those are memory makers, you know? It's really just a neat way of spending a weekend.
It really is. And I love that you came on and just talked about all this stuff because if you were looking for an adult sized hobby that will only feed you with great, wonderful stories and experiences and people, this is it. I mean, you can absolutely, if you golf and you're like, golf's kind of lame right now, go race. If you are trying to find something else to do, go race, go try it. You can do this. It's, look, drag racing, God bless, great. That's fantastic. Autocross, great. That's fantastic. It's not wheel to wheel endurance racing where you are just, it's a different thing for sure. And I don't know. I wish I had more time and means to do it more because I adore it. But I am going to come out and marshal some this year, and hopefully we get our act together as a team and get our car on the track. I'm going to have some questions for you because I got to check up on some things that we need to get smart on. But anything you want to say in closing?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on, and you've been such a great supporter and ambassador for this segment of motorsports, which I appreciate because you build these types of series one team at a time. So I just want to say thank you for helping us share what we love to do and having the ability to get some other folks in a race car. And after 2020, folks need to find something that's going to be fun for 2021. And we've got lots of opportunities to help them do that. So I want to wish you a happy holiday.
Yes, thank you so much. Happy holiday to you and to everybody else out there. We're about to hit the big Christmas, New Year's stretch here and wrap up Hanukkah. So lots of, and Festivus and Kwanzaa are all right here. So it's
Exactly. And
it's time.
Boxing Day. Don't
It's
forget about our
Boxing Day,
Canadians.
yeah. And we can't forget our Orthodox brothers and sisters because Epiphany's coming up in about 2 weeks as well. So, all right, stand by. Let me sign off. Hold on one sec.